What's going on, everybody? My name is Justin Gotzi for the Football Source. Thank you so much for checking out tonight's video. Here discussing the game between the Minnesota Vikings and the St. Louis Rams, giving you guys a quick recap on what happened on Week 1. We're going to be doing this throughout the next few weeks and see how far we can go with this. Viewer count, your guys' comments, we'll just have to wait and see what you guys feel about this video going forward and the process that we're doing. We're not going to be previewing a lot of these games. We're going to be previewing the big games, but for people who have not watch the week's games, we're gonna give you guys the recaps of the game. So let's get right into it. This was pretty much a game that was already bombarded in the first half. It was all about the Minnesota Vikings today. The St. Louis Rams did have their problems on both offense and defense, being injured on both sides of the ball, but the Minnesota Vikings did come into this game and easily just came in and started attacking the St. Louis Rams, a team a lot of people are having very doubts about the future of quarterback Sam Bradford. They're just saying that this year is just going to be like how the Indianapolis Colts lost for Andrew Luck. Get a high draft pick. That's the only thing that St. Louis is potentially playing right now. I know it's week 1. It's very hard to really just throw stuff onto the line right now. But St. Louis, with the way that they played today, the future is in doubt for this team's success going down the line. Matt Castle for the Minnesota Vikings tonight really came onto the scene early and stayed consistent throughout. 17 for 25 for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. Very solid game indeed for Matt Castle. A lot of people are saying, could the future in Matt Castle be bright in Minnesota? A lot of people also said that he's could potentially be going to the Houston Texans. I did not think that Matt Castle going to Houston was going to be an option. I think the Minnesota Vikings will have to do whatever it takes in order to keep Castle there, because his time in Minnesota has been pretty great. He has not messed up a whole lot like other quarterbacks like Christian Ponder has. But Matt Castle has done a great job to really cement his spot as a starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings going forward. Now, when it comes to the rushing game for Minnesota, Cordero Patterson completely dominated Adrian Peterson in that category. Cordero Patterson had a huge game today, both kind of receiving, but primarily it was all about the rushing game for Cordero Patterson, which Akeem McCall called it himself. He said, if you go back and look at his fantasy at his fantasy video for week 1 of the NFL season, he said you're going to see a lot of Cordero Patterson rushing more than actual catching, because when you look at the catching, Greg Jennings is trying to break out. He's trying to get the ball more to him. Last year he did not get the ball thrown to him on a constant basis, and he pretty much struggled last year. It was kind of like one of those down years that we've never seen. It was kind of one of those adjustment years for Greg Jennings. But needless to say, Cordero Patterson did beat out, statistic-wise, over Adrian Peterson in the rushing category. Only 3 carries for 102 yards and a touchdown, with a huge 34-yard gain for a touchdown in, I think, the second half of the game against St. Louis. Adrian Peterson, on the other hand, 21 carries for 75 yards, averaging 3.6 yards a carry. Not that bad, but it's still a slow start to the year. Players have those games, and Adrian Peterson just found this one. But Cordero Patterson did run away with this. A great game for Adrian Peterson and Cordero Patterson. The rushing game is well on its way to success. Greg Jennings gets a big applause from me today for 6 receptions for 58 yards, averaging 9.7 yards per catch or reception for 1 touchdown. Very excellent game for Greg Jennings, as he's going to hopefully continue a hot streak down the line of the season. Hopefully he can get more get his yardage up, so that he can have one of those profile players on the team. Minnesota Vikings need that high profile wide receiver next to Cordero Patterson. Hopefully that they can continue Greg Jennings' legacy in Minnesota like he left off in Green Bay. Now, when it comes over to the St. Louis side of things, this is where a lot of things struggle for St. Louis. They did play 2 quarterbacks today, as Sean Hill left the second half or the first half with a thigh injury, and they turned things over to Austin Davis, a rookie out of Southern Mississippi, an undrafted free agent out of Southern Mississippi a couple of years ago. Davis has been primarily that third-string quarterback on this team, whether it's on the practice squad, but this is a year where he's getting, by the practice squad and being placed on the active roster. The St. Louis Rams are deciding to stay within the system and stick with the 2 quarterbacks that they have for the year, while Sam Bradford is out, cleaning up his injuries, trying to get back to full health. And Austin Davis really went to work, defeating Sean Hill, easily in the statistics category. 16 for 23. That is a quarterback rating of 76.7. Austin Davis had a 63 for 23, completion attempt, duo right there. And then when it comes to the receiving, or to the yards, I'm mixing up my words right now. I apologize. 16 for 23 for 192 yards, averaging 8.3 yards per pass. He did get an interception in this game. Sean Hill, on the other hand, 8 for 13, 81 yards, 6.2 2.2 yards per throw, and also had an interception. So no touchdowns coming on the side of the St. Louis Rams today, as the passing game seems a little bit more improved with Austin Davis over Sean Hill. Austin Davis could primarily be that starting quarterback next week, but you know what, we'll just have to wait and see on how Sean Hill and Austin Davis, play throughout practice this week. And will Sean Hill's injury, his thigh injury, be serious? Could it be worse? Could even the St. Louis Rams look outside and pick up a street free agent? We'll just have to wait and find out, as the next couple of days go about. But the St. Louis Rams not having a solid start off to the season. As it goes to the other positions, Brian Cook did have a pretty solid game, 7 receptions for 99 yards. The longest was 23 yards. That's the third longest reception of the game for a wide receiver, but he did lead the team in receiving yards with 99. Zach Stacy, on the other hand, had 11 carries for 43 yards for 3.9 yards per carry. A lot of people are saying that Zach Stacy's going to be that guy that really breaks out onto the scene this year, because the passing game is primarily irrelevant for the St. Louis Rams at this current time. So what's the next thing you got to do? Turn to your rushing game. Put Zach Stacy, put the ball in Zach Stacy's hands a little bit more. Have him break out in just one season. A lot of people are expecting him to come into this year and really explode. I expect him to have a great year this year, but do I honestly think he's going to make a huge impact? I don't think so. I think that when you look at Zach Stacy, he's going to be a guy who's going to go in there. He can average you roughly around 100 yards a game is asking a little bit too much. I can think he can sum up around, when it comes to the backup running back, if you also want to split carries with Cunningham, Zach Stacy's going to be the guy to go to. But you know what, in this game, this was all about the Vikings defense, which was on cue. Zach Stacy just did not get enough time to really go in and fully come onto the scene and really express himself. What's he all about? I think next week could be that possibility that Zach Stacy gets that time, but this is not a week for him, as the St. Louis Rams could not pick up the victory as they lose 34-6. Austin Davis gets a top performance in my book. He's coming in on the second half alone, throwing for nearly 200 yards on the Minnesota Vikings defense. The rushing game was completely shut out for the St. Louis Rams. Zach Stacy is now back to the drawing board. Cordero Patterson gets my top performer as a rusher. And then for receiving, Brian Quick. Great job to Brian Quick tonight. 7 receptions for 99 yards. Minnesota is on their way to a victory with a 34-6 victory over St. Louis. St. Louis, starting the season at 0-1, is back to the drawing board for them. For the Minnesota Vikings, time to celebrate. Now it's on for week 2. Can these two teams get back onto the winning circle? Can Minnesota continue this start a winning streak? Can the St. Louis Rams bounce back from a very disappointing loss? We'll just have to wait and see in week 2. I'm Justin Gotzi, and I'll catch you guys in my next game.